Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you a build I did for a client. He wanted a table for his RV. He went online and found a design that he liked, and I just went in and downsized it to fit his RV. So I hope you enjoy. Started out with a crude design, kind of a mock-up of what we wanted. We used white oak, red oak, walnut, poplar, and some stained pine. Oh yeah, and some white maple. Here we're going to cut up some poplar. Here's some repurposed white oak. Here we are cutting up some red oak. After cutting the boards to length, then I turned around and put them on the table saw and cut them to their correct width. Unfortunately, I have a bad habit of not turning off the camera, and I ran my batteries down. So here the boards are cut to their correct width, and I'm separating them on the ends of the table that they will go. But just in case you think you might have missed out on something, this is what it looked like.
Well, something like that.
Here, I drew the table out on the top of my work table, and I'm laying the pieces out roughly where they'll go. After looking at it a couple of times, we did change a few pieces so that they would look better. Once we got the pieces where we wanted them, then it was time to take them over to the miter saw and cut them to length. Okay, that's enough. I think you get the idea. Now for a little light sanding. Then it was time for the biscuit joiner to join all the boards together. Then it was time for the glue up. I glued up all the boards in sections so they would be easier to manage and keep straight. scraping the excess glue off the back side. Then it was time to glue up all the pieces to make one end of the table. First, we scrape all the excess glue off the back sides. Then we give both pieces a real good sanding. Then we took some MDF and some Tyvek tape to make our mold. Then a few pocket hole screws. Here I am mixing and pouring the first level. The client has a RV that has a bunch of earthy tones, kind of fall earthy tones. So we wanted to go with some greens, some oranges, and a little bit of the maroons in there. The technique that I'm using here is going to be to pour the bright colors on the bottom and then come back with a pearl over the top. So you can just see one side is orange and one side is green. I mix a small batch of resin, separate them into 2 cups, pour in the color. It's easier to work with when you make small batches. That way it's easy to correct small mistakes. With the wood weighted down, I tried to pour the colors at the same time to try to keep them separated one side to the other. Seeing that the color was way too light, as we said before, doing small batches makes it easy to just mix up another batch, make it a little darker, and pour it in. Here we're pouring in a darker batch and pushing back the orange that pushed into the green a little bit. Then we take a torch and flame all the bubbles out. The next morning, after everything is nice and dry, then we start in with the first pearl coat. Here I'm just moving it around to make sure that we've got good coverage and to make sure the pearl doesn't just fall down. Another reason for doing small batches is because in this project I did not want to go over the top of the wood. You could go over it and then come back and route the top down toward the level you wanted, but I really didn't want to do that. Really wanted to take my time, make the level come up to the wood, and stop there. After getting everything where I wanted it, it was time to flame again. After flaming it a few times to get the bubbles out, then we covered it up for overnight so no bugs or dust would get in it. Came back the next morning, mixed up another batch of pearl, and just continuing on the pours. And now for the final batch of pearl. And this is what it looks like before you flame it. It's all full of bubbles. After getting any trash out with my trusty ice pick and swirling the pearl so you can see it better, and of course flaming it one more time to get the bubbles out, this is what it looks like. Now it's time to mix and pour the first clear coat. From here, I just simply smooth it out with my hands to make sure that the coverage goes over the whole piece. It will self-level. Then, you guessed it, flaming the bubbles out. It was at this point I realized I had made a mistake. I had forgotten to seal my wood, so therefore bubbles were coming out of it pretty good. It took a lot of extra flaming to get the air bubbles out and a lot more work down the line. But oh well, live and learn. After it dried, I sanded it with a 320 grit just to rough it up a little. Then we go in to fix some of the bubble holes that were in the piece. Once it was dry, it was time to take it out of the mold. Here I took my router and with an 1/8 inch roundover bit, we just barely took the edge off. On this edge it was a little high, and so I had to take a razor blade and manually cut it down so that the router would fit flush on the table. Next, I set up my router jig to route the bottom of the table to make it nice and even and flat from where all the resin had leaked underneath the table and made it very uneven. I then taped up both ends of the table so that I wouldn't scratch the tabletop, and then we trimmed both ends to size. Next, I sanded down the edge that I razor bladed down. It still was a little high, so we sanded it down and went ahead and sanded the rest of the piece, getting it ready for the next coat. Here we're taping down to run the router down the side to clean up the edges and get them down to the width that we want. Next, we turn the table over and seal the bottom, what we should have done to the top in the first place. To give the table strength, we took some 1/2 inch square tubing, measured, routed, and put those in the bottom of the table to give it strength. This took several passes, a little at a time. Then we turned it around and routed the other side to fit the second metal bar. Then we just took some automotive body filler and basically glued the bars in the back side. I then taped off the bottom side with Tyvek tape so I could pour a thin layer to seal the bottom. With some light sanding, we then flipped it over and took a razor blade and tried to clean up a few of the little drips that were off the side. Now it's time for that final clear coat.